Hey everyone, welcome back. Let's go ahead and actually do some object-oriented programming in action so you can see the code and see how it works. Now, one of the things I'd like to point out before we start is that my goal in this section is to keep these videos short so you actually understand it better and also pick it up much easier so we don't cover too much in every single video. Again, object-oriented programming is a little bit complicated sometimes, and you definitely want to have it in like small bits basically fed to you. That way you understand it better and you pick it up better. But that being said, I'm going to go ahead and create a new project in PyCharm. So we're just going to call this object-oriented programming example. All right. And make sure that your interpreter is on the last version. In this case, it is. And we're just going to click create. All right, let's go ahead and do this. I just ended up on my other screen. All right, so there you go. We have a project in hand. All right, so I want to talk about a very important concept before we actually go ahead and do some, object-oriented code here. So I'm just going to get rid of this. And one of the things I want you to remember is that if you remember, we always had this thing where we would import code, right? So we would we had this ability to import modules from other Python files. For example, if I actually go ahead and create, let's say, a new Python file, all right? I'm just gonna call this, for example, data.py or whatever, right? So this is a separate Python file from my main file, right? So I'm just gonna call this, for example, let's say people equal, for example, 30. All right, so this is a simple variable with a simple number, right? Nothing crazy about it. Now, if I actually want to, reference this in my main Python file, one of the things I can do is that I can say import data, right? And then from the, because I imported this file, I can say, print, for example, I can say data, and we can say people. So if you take a look, what is going to happen is that now in the main file, we're going to print this variable. So we just imported it. So if I print this right here, we're going to get 30, right? See, so basically that's what happened here. We ended up printing this. And one of the things I want you to remember is that when you actually do object-oriented programming, it is pretty much how you actually use it. So if we take a look, we got the data, which was the, the file that we imported. And then this is a variable inside this, Python file that we just imported, right? And if you actually take a look, this is what's really good about the PyCharm. Like when I'm typing this, if I put the dot, as you see, we get this, drop down here. It says people is a variable. I see it has a V icon. So that tells us it's a variable. So if I click on this, it's going to pull that data. Just like that. So when you actually are using object-oriented programming, in this case, we're going to use the turtle library. It is pretty much how you use it. Instead of just, using, obviously variable here, we use a class. It is pretty much the same thing. I'll show you how right now. So let's get rid of this. All right. And hopefully that made sense. But anyways, I'm just going to close that. So what we're going to do is we're going to import the library, the turtle library, and that's very simple. You're just going to say import turtle, and as you see, it is right here in your library. As you see, it has it says turtle, and it has a Python icon. So that's basically, that means that it's a default library in there. So when I import it, that's pretty much it. That's how it's going to work. Now we're going to turn this into an object, right? So if you remember the way we printed the variable on the data file, what we did was that we say, data dot the variable. So in this case, I'm going to say turtle because that's what we imported, okay? And then we're going to say turtle, which is going to be the class. Take a look. So if you take a look, the T, which is the first one, which is a T, and you see it has a C icon here. So that is telling us, right, that this is a class. And it's really important to pay attention to it, because as I said, when you're working with classes in Python, you will have you will have a Pascal case. If you take a look, for example, turtle screen, T is the capital, and also S is capital. And same thing for all of these classes here. See, a raw turtle. So R is capital, T is capital too. So as see, this is Pascal case, and this is how you actually know it's a class. And again, you don't have to, again, we'll talk about this when we get to creating our own classes, but it's just a good practice to do this. That way you understand the difference between a class variable and function and all that stuff. So in this case, I'm just going to say turtle. So I see we just imported that. Now, obviously, you want to call this. So that means that you want to have that parentheses open and close. And just like that, we pulled the turtle from the file that we just imported. Now, this is the turtle class. Remember, this is a class right now. So we imported the turtle class from the turtle library, basically, that we have in Python. So this is the library we just imported. And then we called this library and said, hey, from this library, import this class. Just like that, we imported it. And now we can actually turn this into an object. And the way we do this, we turn it into a variable. So I'm just going to say Tom equals, and there you go. So now this whole class is an object, and the object name is Tom. So we can create multiple objects, right, from a class. So remember, I'm just going to say Timmy, for example, and we can use the same thing. We can just drop this whole code here, and there you go. Now we got two objects that are Tom and Timmy. So again, you can create unlimited amount of objects from a class. That's very important to remember. So that's pretty much how you actually import a class and how you actually use and implement it. Now, obviously, we're gonna talk about using these, and you'll see like how do you actually put this to practice. But that is pretty much how it works. Also, another way to do this, by the way, let's actually comment this out, just like that way you guys don't get confused. So another way to do this is actually you can just like make it a little more simpler. You can say from turtle, okay, import turtle. So that way, I see what I did was I just strictly instead of importing the whole library in my code, I actually imported just the turtle class. And the idea behind this, and if you take a look, when we actually say turtle, I see it's a class, so it's a C, right? So the idea with this is that you make your code more efficient, and this is something I recommend doing. It's just like much cleaner, right? So now if I want to do this, now if I want to create an object, I'm gonna say Tom equals turtle. There you go, and an open and close parentheses, and just like that. So we called the class turtle and we assigned it to Tom, which is an object, right? So just like that, now we can actually start using Tom all over our code as an object and work with the turtle library essentially. So I hope this made sense, guys. Make sure you practice and put it to use. Calling a library is the first, calling a class essentially is the first step to working with object-oriented programming. So you want to make sure you understand that. Let me know if you have any questions. Practice this a little bit because we're going to expand on this. So I want you to make sure you understand what you're doing here. So let me know if you have any questions. If not, I'll see you in the next lesson where we start actually using the object in the code and start creating some interesting stuff.